In this lesson, we're going to talk about increasing and decreasing intervals using interval notation. I have a graph here. It's a piecewise function, and it has both increasing and decreasing as well as a constant segment. So let's take a look at the increasing intervals first. Interval notation, I would like to remind you that you always use x values only. When you're writing, you're only allowed to use x values. We're basically saying these are the x values from here to here that describe what the y values are doing. So for instance, my first increasing interval, remember we always read from left to right, so I'm going to start on the far left side of the graph. I see that x value of where it starts increasing is -5. I also see that it's a closed circle. So I'm going to use a bracket. So from -5, and we're coming across here, and I'm looking at the x-axis, as you can see. It stops increasing where x equals -2. Now here I'm going to use a parentheses. I'm using a parentheses because the -2 shares the interval of increasing and constant. So since it shares, it's traditional that we would use a parentheses. I'm going to use the union symbol. This means and. Now the next place where this graph is increasing is at 1, and it stops increasing at 3. So my next interval of increasing, I'm going to use a parentheses because again, this 1 is being shared by the constant and increasing, and it increases until x equals 3. And again, I'm going to use a parentheses. Okay, now we're going to take a look at the decreasing interval. And the decreasing interval is here where our y values are going down. And I see that it starts at x equals 3. And again, I'm going to use a parentheses because this x equals 3 is shared by the increasing and the decreasing. And it stops decreasing right here at 5. Now I'm going to use a bracket because it doesn't seem that the graph goes on and that 5 is not being shared by anything else. So I have one decreasing interval. Lastly, I have a constant interval. Let's do that one next. I see that it starts being constant at -2 and it ends at 1. So I would say, we're going to use a parentheses again because it's being shared from -2 until 1, and a parentheses again because the 1 is also being shared with the increasing interval. I have two more examples to do with you here. The first one is this on the left. We have a parabola, and it's asking for the increasing interval. Well, I'm going to have to do a little bit of guesstimating here, but on my parabola, this part is decreasing. On the left side, coming in, because remember we read from left to right, when I'm reading this, I see that my y values are decreasing, decreasing, decreasing. And right here at the vertex, they start increasing. So we're going to guesstimate about where that vertex is. I would say that's probably at about 1/2, -1/2. So my interval of increasing, I'm going to use a parentheses, is 1/2, -1/2. Now this arrow means infinity, and we're really looking, remember we're looking at the x values. So the arrow is actually referring to both positive infinity on the x and positive infinity on the y. So I'm increasing from -1/2 all the way to positive infinity. Okay, decreasing again is this side. So we're coming in from -infinity on the x-axis. So I'm decreasing all the way till that -0.5. So decreasing interval, x values only, remember, -infinity to -0.5. Notice that this vertex is being shared by both increasing and decreasing. It's like it's the crossover point. Let's do this last example. Okay, here we're going to look at increasing first. I have two pieces that are increasing, right here and here. So we're going to have two different intervals. My first interval, I see it starts at -1 and it ends right here, which is 0. So my first interval is this piece. My second interval is from 1 to infinity. So remember, we're just looking at x values. And then the decreasing, I see, again, we have two intervals. We have this piece and this piece here. So going from left to right, we're starting at -infinity, right? That's what the arrow means. And we're cruising across and we stop decreasing at -1. So from -infinity to -1, and we pick it back up here at the 0, x equals 0, and it goes until x equals 1. Remember, we only get to use x values when we're describing where the y values are increasing or decreasing.